Spooky, do you want to help review a book? Spooky. Hello everybody, and welcome back to Orthodox Review, the most uneducated educational program on the internet. I'm your host, the guy with 1.5 thumbs. At any rate, as you can see before you, we're going to be going over the monastic breviary of Matins, according to the Holy Rule of Saint Benedict, which is part 2 of the monastic diurnal from Lancelot Andrews Press. Now, of course, before we get into it, first of all, thank you to my patrons for helping make this show possible. And if you'd like to join their ranks, there's a link below. All sorts of fun and interesting content for my patrons, including an upcoming series on Psalm 118 from the works of St. Theophan the Recluse. So that's a thing. If you're looking to support the show with just a little drop in the bucket there, we have a PayPal tip jar. As always, if you're new to the channel, please like, share, subscribe, all that neat stuff that helps me help you help me. Let's help each other. Anyway, so that being out of the way, let's get right into it. Now, to briefly go back over what we saw in the last in this series, the monastic diurnal, for those who don't know, is the Western form of praying the hours with the Psalms, and is quite different from the way we do it in the East, but really at its core, not too different. Pretty much it's the way they're ordered is slightly different, and of course there's more variable parts when it comes to propers of the saints, the prayers that are said each day. So it's but it's neat. I mean, if you've ever had the opportunity to stream one of the services of the hours in the Western Rite, or even from the Romans, you can see why so many people are enamored with the beauty of the service. So Matins. Okay, these are all the other hours. This is Matins. Okay, so Matins, by far my favorite service outside of the Divine Liturgy, no matter what rite you're using, is a lot easier to use, actually. So let's go over the book and its construction, and then we'll get into the contents. Now, this version is 2007 Lancelot Andrews Press. And this is a reprint of the original 1961 from the Society of the Sacred Cross, which is an Anglican community in the Benedictine tradition. And they are high Anglicans. So what it is they much like with the diurnal, this is a correction to form. After some Latin tampering in the early 20th century. So this is from the French Breviary Monasticum, 1956, and is of course a companion piece to the diurnal. Now, Lancelot Andrews Press has done a fine job with the binding. Good and tight. It's that kind of rubbery faux leather that I personally am a fan of, because not only does it give a good grip, it holds up really well and significantly lowers the cost of production. Not everything has to be full-grain goat skin, folks. I hate to break it to you, but really, really well constructed. Being a facsimile, I gotta say the print is nice and clear. There's no real, because sometimes you see a lot of smudging in print, and you don't really see that, and the bleed through isn't terrible. I mean, this is, Bible paper, but it's of a heavier grade, and so there's not a whole lot of bleed through. So I will say that this over the diurnal, I think, is the superior publication. If you remember, and just in case you don't, the reprint of the Oxford Diurnal, well, now that I've broken mine in a little bit more, it opens a little easier, but it just seemed a bit tight, primarily because the cover material they used was just a tad too stiff, but the paper stock is fantastic. But I like small books, but I also like small books that open easy. And if you're near the beginnings, it can feel a bit stiff, but otherwise, you know, a fine addition to any library. So the Matins book is slightly larger, and for good reason. There's a lot to go through in here. So, with the praise of construction out of the way, let's get into the meat and potatoes, as we like to say. So Matins in the Western rule follows a pretty simple form. When you break it down, you start with your opening prayers, and then you have your ordinary, which is the stuff that's always unchanging every day. You pray all this stuff every day, and then you get into the days of the week, wherein you have 3 nocturnes. The first 2 are 6 psalms with antiphons and absolution and lessons. So let's go to Thursday. I'm recording this on a Thursday, so we're going to do Thursday. So if I were to pray the Matins on a Thursday privately, or if I was in a church, we would start with the prayer before the divine office, the ordinary, which is the inventory, hymns, pretty much the Our Father, Hail Mary, Creed, opening verses, Psalm 3, an inventory, Psalm 95, and then we get into our Thursdays. So the first nocturne, we have the 6 psalms with antiphons, right? And then there's a short lesson, and then the second nocturne, same as the first. And then when we get to the third nocturne, which I seem to have passed because I wasn't paying attention, third nocturne would be 3 canticles, absolution, lesson, hymn, collect, and ending prayer. So not too complex. You know, the days of the week, it's all laid out there for you. Now let's say we're doing a feast day. Since it's coming up, let's look at Pentecost. So for the Feast of Pentecost, there is a completely different set of psalms that would be read from that particular Sunday. But like everything else, doesn't really change. Now within an octave, which is okay, let's say that this upcoming Tuesday, within Pentecost. So the psalms wouldn't change, but there would be variable lessons, and that pretty much goes on throughout the year. Now in this the what would you call later months of the year, that being August through December, there's extra stuff, and then you get into the propers of any given saint, and there is a calendar of them. So you would have propers for saints in each month, and then commons for saints. So there's quite a few movable parts, but all in all, a lot easier to navigate because you're only dealing with one service, and it's a pretty wide and stretched out service. So it's ridiculously easy to use once you know the table of contents. Now there is, of course, a Western Rite supplement to correct certain things to the Orthodox calendar and rubrics, and thank God for that being in there. And of course the text matches the rest of the book, which was beautifully done. And outside of that, there's not much more to it. It's just, for those of you that are into exploring Western Rite Orthodoxy and monasticism, or are just one of those hardcore suckers that likes to spend a couple hours reading Psalms in the morning, Matins, there it is. Now, these books are not cheap. They're not expensive, but they're not cheap. But the good people at Lancelot Andrews Press, they do have a coupon code for my viewers. If you were to buy these two together and use the code Pray with Raphael, you will receive $30 off your order, and that is incredibly kind of them. So take advantage of that. If nothing more, just from a scholastic point of view, these are interesting to take a look at and see what our cousins outside of the East do. And we're going to tie this all up in an episode coming up where I'm going to go through the differences between the forms of Matins from the East, the West, and the South, actually, because we're gonna throw the Coptic Matins in there as well. But anyway, I've gone on long enough, and since you've been so good to me, I'm gonna be good to you and let you see. Her Royal Highness sleeping away. I kind of miss the days when she used to interrupt the video. At any rate. Right. Oof, boy. I'm not having a good one this morning. Anyway, thank you all so much for sticking around to the end of the video. On behalf of Spooky Cat and myself, I wish you all a joyous feast of Pentecost coming up. And stay safe out there. I love you all. I'm still praying. Don't forget to go to church, say your prayers, and remember God. God bless.